Coming up on the live stream, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida on May 4th demanded an apology from everyone who said Florida was going to spike.
I think apologies can be sent to City of Jacksonville. Attention, Mayor Curry. You may want to CC the mayors of Neptune Beach, Jacksonville Beach, and Atlantic Beach, but I won't hold my breath on that happening.
Good, because we've run out of bed space. Now you want audio as well? I give you so much, people. So much. And now you expect me to talk out loud. It's, hello, everyone. So I've made the chat window bigger over there. I've made the font in it bigger because some people have said it's too small to see on their phone. So if you're looking on the phone and you're saying, hey, it's too small or it's too big or whatever, let me know. I can adjust it down from there. So I figured out how to do that. So now that I've turned my mic on for you specifically, and I'm talking to you and you know who you are, welcome everybody. A boring day in the news today. That's the hospitalization rate right there. I've shown you this chart before. It's on the way up. It crept up over the weekend. Florida's numbers are still not included in that chart. And the reporters have been asking Ron DeSantis, Republican governor of Florida, hey, why don't you give, and DeSantis said, oh, we've given you this, we give you this. And then the reporter said, no, that's useless to us. We need to know what the hospitalizations are doing. So that number right there is pretty much everyone but Florida and Kansas. Even the District of Columbia is in there. So we don't know what's going on in Florida. We do know that they had 10,000 new cases yesterday, but no hospitalization rates. We do know that 42 hospitals in Florida are out of ICU beds. 42 hospitals. But we don't know how many people are in hospital with COVID. And that's what's going on. So, hey, Kim. Hey, Casey. Good to see you. Hey, Stephanie. Hey, Lynn. Hey, Airbus. Yes. So the chat should all go to all the other chats. So when you say something in Twitch or Twitter, it should populate in YouTube. Same goes for the YouTube chat. It should populate in the other chat windows. Let's see how it goes today, guys. It might drive Danielle crazy if she's here. She's moderating on YouTube. There she is. Hey, Danielle. So we'll see if this format works for us. And if it does, I might be able to get rid of that chat window over there so that you guys, whatever app you're on, you should be able to see it. So if you're in the Facebook chat, let's see, I'm in the Facebook chat. Okay. So the Facebook chat is retweeting the stuff that Kim just sent out in the Periscope app, which is Twitter. So this is all very technical minutia. Anyway, so that's what we're trying out today. We'll see how it goes. Hi, Jackie, producer Jackie. Good to see you. Hi, producer Rich. So we'll see what happens. I don't mind that chat window over there, but I want it to be big enough for you guys to see. And if you guys type long things, it's very possible that it'll take up too much room on that. Anyway. Moving on from that, so I guess the first thing we'll get to is Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, who won't give up the hospitalization stats. He did a conference yesterday, and I'll pull that up for you guys here. Let's go to, what's this one here? Do I have it in here? I don't have it there. How about here? I don't have it there either. Where did it go? You guys talk amongst yourselves. I had it pulled up. Give me a moment here. And, oh, I know. I pulled it up in another browser. So there's the president. Let's do this first. Let's do the president, and he's talking with Lopez Obrador, who he thinks is Elmo instead of AMLO. That's my joke. Nobody gets it. Nobody appreciates it. But you know what? It tickles me. Here we go.
It's a nice hot day, put it mildly. So we'll make this quick, but it's all very positive, that I can say, and it's my tremendous pleasure to welcome
Okay, he didn't take questions because it was so hot today. So
everyone to the White House with my good friend, President Lopez Obrador of Mexico. We've had a very outstanding relationship. Mr. President, we're truly moved that you chose to make your first foreign visit since taking...
Oh, and since today is pretty much just nonsense from the authorities, I'm going to try and pay more attention. Hey, Aldous, to you guys in the chat room. Hi, Lizzie. If you'd like to join the chat room, that's great. The best place to do it is Kevinly Father. Sorry. If you want to give me money, go to kevinlyfather.com. It's been a couple of days since I've had a new patron. So kevinlyfather.com. Help me support doing this type of thing. Oh, Lynn got my joke. Thank you, Lynn. That's why I have the chat room, so I can feel good about myself. Because really, that's why we're all here. If you want to support me, go to kevinlyfather.com or PayPal me directly at paypal.me/KevinlyDad. I've thought about doing just kind of a chat time with you guys. Some of the patrons have suggested doing a Zoom meeting, and we'll do that at some point too, I hope. In the meantime, days like today, where they're just going to spew nonsense. There's nothing newsworthy there. We'll just talk about things, and I'll try and pay more attention to the chat window. So you're going to be seeing me look off to the side a lot more than I normally do. Who cares? Okay, moving on.
In office, very successfully taking office, I might add, to be with us at the White House. The relationship between the United States and Mexico has never been closer than it is right now.
But they're literally against each
other. As the president said a little while ago, people were betting against that. They were actually betting against that. But it's never been stronger.
They were actually betting in Vegas. They were betting on
together.
Against a closer
friends,
relationship.
Partners, and neighbors. Our cooperation is founded on mutual trust and mutual respect between the two of us and between our two countries.
No news on the border wall check.
And we honor the great dignity of both nations. With this visit, President Lopez Obrador and I have the opportunity to strengthen the bond we have forged since his impressive election victory more than 2 years ago. A victory the Vice President and Ivanka joined in celebrating at the swearing-in. It was a very exciting day for them. Each of us was elected on the pledge to fight corruption, return power to the people, and put the interests of our countries first. And I do that, and you do that, Mr. President.
Yeah, Cam, we might not do Zoom. We might do something else because Kevinly's son has warned against Zoom as well. But you don't have to download the app to do Zoom, but we'll figure it out.
And in particular, it includes President Abraham Lincoln and President Benito
There
Juarez,
are rumors out there that Zoom is actually a good way for hackers to get into your computer.
One another in very, very high
I don't know that to be true, but we'll explore, which is why I'm not jumping into it right away.
Did great things together, and we are grateful that this morning President Lopez Obrador laid a wreath at the memorials
one of the Mexican provinces, states, closed the border, I think south of Arizona, because Arizona's doing so poorly.
Beautiful ceremony. Our countries are linked by trade and travel, by history and culture, by faith and family. The United States is home to 36 million incredible Mexican-American citizens.
Oh, is that what happened? Was Trudeau, Marcy says Trudeau might have been invited to this, but decided not to show up. This is a USMCA or NUFTA
national
deal.
Life. They are hardworking, incredible people. They are also great businessmen and women.
I don't know that to be true.
And make up a big
Marcy
percentage
makes things up.
Of our small
totally
business
made up
owners.
this guy that she's living with called
They're
Maurice.
very, very successful.
So
they're like you. They're tough negotiators and great business people, Mr.
How'd the audition
President.
go? Thank you for asking.
Working alongside
no
President
idea.
Lopez Obrador.
Kevinly daughter was great.
We're taking this relationship to
I
new
was
heights
okay.
and building a powerful
but you never
economic
know.
and security
They did say thank you and
partnership.
great job and thanks for your time.
Together
and all that
we have
sort of stuff,
addressed many of the most
you never have any
complex
idea.
issues facing our
Sometimes
two
I think I
countries.
absolutely just
That
bit
really
and
went
I get it.
unresolved
And then I think
for
like, man, I
many
nailed
years.
that sucker. And nothing.
Frankly, far too long. Should have been resolved long before I got here. But we're achieving great strides.
But if we don't get it, it's because of Kevinly daughter. Just saying. She just closed the door, so she can't hear me, and she never watches the broadcast. But unless she wants to make fun of me, no, she was great actually. And a lot is going to depend on how they feel, and maybe somebody will walk in there. I can tell you this: we did have to do some banter, some playful banter with the person reading on the other side. Very difficult over Zoom because of the delay in the broadcast. comedy is all about the being funny, and that's difficult over the Zoom because there is a delay. It's about the timing, and it's weird.
And remarkable breakthroughs in strengthening our relationship.
Well, that gets back to the green room says audition might go better if you got the barber. It's going to be dependent on Kevin Lee Daughter, really. I just have one line in there, and then a couple of ad libs, but she's the bulk of the commercial. She's sort of the star, and people love Kevin Lee Daughter, so hopefully we get it. But you never know. They may. Oh, actually, they have to choose a white family this time because the star of the commercial, who's a known celebrity, is we know what he looks like, or she. We know what they look like, and so they will probably go with whoever does the best job that looks most like, they could be this guy's sister, or however they end up choosing it. She's lovely. Anyway.
Relationship for decades to come. With everything that we have accomplished, the potential for the future of the United States and Mexico is unlimited. Far, far greater situation really for both countries than anyone thought possible. Today we celebrate the historic victory we achieved together just days ago when NAFTA was officially terminated, one of the worst trade deals in history, and replaced with a brand new, beautiful USMCA.
Oh, it's beautiful.
We want to thank Canada also. I spoke with and will be speaking to the Prime Minister in a little while.
Do you remember his name?
NAFTA slashed wages and eliminated jobs. The USMCA includes groundbreaking labor protections for workers in both
just the flu, Jackie.
nations. This landmark agreement will bring countless jobs from overseas back to North America, and our countries will be very big beneficiaries. We are already seeing the fruits because it started. It's the back to North America.
He does it. He always says beneficiaries instead of beneficiaries. I don't know what he said there, but the sentence itself was not English. So somehow he got lost on the page. Let's listen. And somebody just hold on a second. I'm going to mute this. Boop. Okay. Okay, sorry. There. It's okay. So that's silence, so we won't get interrupted by those messages anymore.
And
let's get going.
Our countries will be very big beneficiaries. We are already seeing the fruits because it's overseas, back to North America, and our countries will be very big beneficiaries.
Our countries will very big beneficiaries.
Already seeing the fruits because it started. It's the largest, fairest, and most advanced trade deal ever reached by any country, and it will bring enormous prosperity to both American and Mexican workers and Canada. We want to thank everybody. We'll have a separate day with Canada.
Okay, quiet. Hold on. Sorry, I gotta mute this. Mute site. I did already. Stop it, all of you senders of messages.
They're coming down at the appropriate time. But we want to congratulate Canada and the people of Canada and the Prime Minister.
Thank you.
But this has been a tremendous achievement. It's actually the largest trade deal ever made. And we made a big one with China, too, but this is the largest trade deal ever made. Our two governments are also in close cooperation to stop the illicit cross-border flow of drugs and guns, cash and contraband, and very importantly, stopping human trafficking. We're forging critical partnerships across the Western Hemisphere to combat the cartels and the smugglers and to ensure safe, humane, and lawful migration. And we've been helped greatly by Mexico on creating record numbers in a positive sense on our southern border. It's been really very, very tight and done a great job. And I want to thank the Secretary who's here. We have Chad, you're here someplace. Where is Chad? What a good job you're doing, Chad. Great job. We're proud of you, and you've worked very closely with Mexico.
He'll talk to Chad, but he won't mention Trudeau's name.
Just telling me what a great help they've been. Right? Thank you very much, Chad. We've also worked closely in the battle against the coronavirus together, saving countless thousands of lives. It's been...
First they're countless. A second later, they're thousands. He's talking about the Mexico and the states working together. So they've saved thousands. He doesn't want to give them full credit for saving the millions of lives that he says he saved. So
My honor to help Mexico.
So by closing the border, Mexico has saved thousands of lives. Maybe he's talking about the prime minister, whose name escapes him, in Canada, also closing the border so that Americans can't infect each side. So yeah, I'm going to go. That's truth. Fact check.
Go procure 600 ventilators, and it's going to be a higher number than that. They needed them very badly, and we were able to make them. We're making thousands a week.
Greenroom, good question. You think Mnuchin is worried about Deutsche Bank? No. I don't think anything that happens in this administration has any consequences whatsoever, except if you're the American people. But the actual people in charge? No, nothing happens.
And we're helping a lot of countries. But one of the first, and maybe the first that I spoke to.
Stephanie says, David, my aunt says Snopes is far left. Fact check on that. It's Snoops she's thinking of.
Was Mexico. We have a lot of them in Mexico, saving a lot of lives. And Mr. President, we're in this fight together, and we're doing very well. It's just a couple of things on that. I'm proud to further announce that the U.S. is by far #1 in testing, #1 in the world in testing, and that the mortality rate is the lowest, or just about the lowest, of any nation anywhere in the world.
We covered this yesterday, not even close. Our mortality rate's about 5%. And when it comes down to everyone, the mortality rates, depending on the strain of the virus you have, will end up being about the same, unless you've run out of ventilators, as happened in Italy, Spain, etc. at the very beginning, because they got slammed and they weren't ready for it.
And we're safely reopening our country, and very importantly, we're safely reopening our schools. We want the schools to be open and going in the fall. And most of them, I think, are looking at it that way. It's very important. We're finding out that learning by computer is not as good as learning in the classroom or learning on the campus. And I
Trump doesn't email.
think you're finding that.
Ivanka emails. She's got a private server that she uses to do government info. Oh, we're not supposed to talk about distraction. Bubba Wallace, Bubba Wallace, Bubba Wallace.
Too.
Hey, Barb.
We wanna
Hey,
learn
RM.
in the classroom. So our schools, we want them open in the fall. Following President Lopez Obrador's remarks, we'll sign a joint declaration committing ourselves to a shared future of prosperity, security, and harmony. This is truly a proud moment in history for.
So I actually do have a file on Snopes of times that Snopes, before the election in 2016, times that Snopes fact-checked Trump versus Hillary or whatever it was, and came out in favor of Trump. So they do call it like they see it. Or I should say they call it like the facts illustrate.
Both of our nations, Mexico and the United States. With the signing, we pledge the close and continued friendship between the United States and Mexico, and we accelerate our progress toward an even greater tomorrow, and that's what's happening. A greater, maybe even a far greater tomorrow, with a prospering region.
A greater tomorrow. Maybe even a far greater tomorrow. Can someone, is there a measurement? This is the device you use to measure tomorrows. So once tomorrow comes, I'll measure tomorrow, and we'll find out if it's greater than today. I've been waiting for tomorrow to come forever.
Flourishing hemisphere and two sovereign nations, thriving, growing, and excelling side by side, working together, and that's what we've been doing. Mr. President, we look forward to hosting you for a beautiful.
I was thinking about that earlier. Hi, Robin. I haven't seen you in a while. I was thinking about that earlier. Like the people who are pushing it, saying it's so important that the kids get back into school, are the exact same people that never learn the difference between your and your.
Dinner later on this evening with some of your friends from Mexico and some of our great friends from the U.S.
Hey, Hibley.
And it's an honor to have you with us. And please, we'd love to have you say a few words. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Silence, silent clap. Maybe he's the silent majority. Okay, so the Mexican president, AMLO, says, or AMLO rather, I got it wrong, says a whole bunch of stuff, far, far more than Trump says. And then,
Thank you very much.
and then he signs, and then here's him leaving. So the reporters say, hey, so the schools are, remember the schools? They walk off.
What's wrong with the original 60
Yeah, why are we revising the CDC guidelines? So the CDC put out guidelines to open up the schools in the last couple of days. They're not even guidelines. Here's what they say. With several pages of pay attention to your local and state authorities, appoint somebody to be sort of your corona czar, make sure you have enough cleaning supplies, and try not to infect everybody. What Trump really doesn't like about that is on the first page of the CDC guidelines, it says low risk or minimal risk is doing all digital learning. Slight higher risk, and then highest risk is having all the kids in the classroom just like it normally was. Trump doesn't want the word risk associated with any of this because everything's great and the economy is better than it ever was, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Plus, you put all the teachers back in to the classrooms, which I think was 3.7 million teachers. At random fact-checked that for us yesterday. You put them back in the classrooms, and that takes another 3.7 million people off the unemployment ranks and back into the job numbers, and it makes the president look better in his eyes. So that's what this is all about. He doesn't care about the kids. Plus, parents who have to watch their kids and homeschool them, etc. You know what? I have no problem with American kids just taking a few months off. Enjoy life. Every one of us knows people who took a year off. I missed months at a time of school as we were traveling between Canada and Africa. If it's elementary school, it's fine. And as long as everybody, for example, if we all decide high schools and colleges, if we all decide, well, colleges you can keep going because, okay, I'm rethinking this as I go. High school doesn't need to pause. All the high school kids can catch up on computers and they can all do distance learning. They're high school kids and above. Your elementary school kids, let's just all take 6 months, see what happens. Enjoy. Go play in a field away from other children. Yes, and all of the stuff that you need the schools for. For example, the kids with disabilities, the kids who need mental counseling, the kids who need depend on school for medical care, which shouldn't be the case, but that's where we are in this country because we don't have socialized medicine. The kids who depend on it for school lunches. Keep all of those programs going. That's such a minimal amount compared to the full amount of the children, if you know what I'm saying. I'm not saying that well. That's a small percentage of the children that need those services. Keep those services going. That you're not going to have to worry about social distancing when it's just a couple of kids in a certain class that need extra counseling or whatever it is that they happen to need. But keep those services going. Those are vital, absolutely. It's things that can't be done distance learning. And for I get it at random. Some parents have to go to work. I should specify this as well. If the incident rate is low enough in the area, send the kids back to school. Absolutely. If it's deemed safe, do it. But remember, not one of the 50 states paid attention to the CDC guidelines, which were actual guidelines for when to reopen. Anyway, there's really very little. I think producer Joanna's in here now too. Hi, Joanna. None of the 50 states paid attention. Nobody's taking this seriously at all. So open up the schools when it's safe. Otherwise, keep them closed. Do distance learning with the older kids. But if we decide in a state, hey, everybody in, let's say, Arizona, where it's out of control right now. If we decide in Arizona, okay, the school year isn't going to start in August. It's going to start in January. Tentatively. We'll see what happens. Bring the rate down so that the kids don't end up being super vectors, and then open up the schools. It's fine because all the kids will be on the same schedule, and you've got all this time to play with before you have to force everybody in there, and before the president has to threaten to take the funding away for schools. It's insane. Yeah, Jackie says Inslee has been trying, in my opinion, and people still won't cut him a break. Some people support Inslee, some people say no, but Inslee took a long time to get the masks into place. And so Washington's mandate for masks just came into being about 2 weeks ago, I think. And noticeably, more people are wearing masks because now they're being told to. There is that percentage of people that are just like, you know what? If the government really wanted us to do it, they'd tell us to do it. And because a recommendation is not a requirement. Keep in mind that the CDC cannot require anyone to do anything. So all they can do is pass recommendations. Let's move on to something else here, guys. Okay. Get rid of this. I'm left-handed again today, guys. Here we go. Here's Governor DeSantis. This is Governor DeSantis from yesterday. Florida said they were going to get 1,000 contact tracers. Florida cities have been told they can't do contact tracing, that only the state can set up the contact tracing. Governor DeSantis, who said everything was going to be fine, he doesn't understand what contact tracing is. And just listen to his answer on this. Hey, Ruth Ann, nothing wrong with doing a reset and making high school graduation at 19. Yeah, I was 17. Some people were 19 in my class. It's like, but it doesn't make a difference. As long as everybody gets to finish the education, they're fine. I missed all kinds of school as a kid, and it didn't hurt me no bit. And I just, because of the larger text now, I've jinxed myself. I was reading something from at random, but I think she said something about Friday for Washington. It was within the last couple of weeks. Bubble Boy and Seinfeld. Good point, Jenna. Not sure what point that is, but it's a good one. I like it. Here we go. Here's DeSantis.
That have been able to get ahead and manage some of these cases, like New York, when they started their reopening plans, they had a pretty robust contact tracing program that dovetailed with that reopening strategy. Infectious disease experts this morning again reiterating to me.
Just in case, I should explain contact tracing. Contact tracing is when you find out somebody has COVID, you say, where have you been? What have you been up to? If you can, show us your Google Maps, because Google keeps track of everywhere you go if you use Google Maps, which I would gladly volunteer. And there's apps around the world that do this. Some universities are talking about instituting these maps. And then you can contact everybody that for example, if they say, oh my God, you have COVID. Have you been around people? Oh, well, let's see. I was in the office last Thursday and Bob was there and Jack was there. And then I played tennis with Stephanie last week, and she's not part of my household. Okay, we're going to contact these people, give us their contact information, and then those people know that they should get tested because they might have the COVID, and so they don't go out and infect everybody else, and you stop the spread. Contact tracing is key. That is how South Korea did it. You get it, you go home, everybody has an app. Some places have put ankle bracelets on people with COVID to make sure they don't leave the hotel room they're put up in. There's all kinds of stuff we can do. We're doing none of it, and DeSantis doesn't even understand why. He can't even get his name right.
That there are not enough contact tracers on the ground. This, as we are now experiencing this rollback, this economic toggle back triggered by the percentage case increase. My question to you is, why didn't you invest in more contact tracers in a hotspot like Miami-Dade and Broward County? And now that Miami-Dade is in this rollback, do you plan to invest more?
I've already green-lighted $138 million for the Department of Health to support not just contact tracing, but other personnel. All the counties have gotten huge amounts of money from the CARES Act. The contact tracing is something that can be done, and it's a component. But understand, when you're talking about an asymptomatic a virus that largely doesn't create symptoms in people who are healthy and under say 50. The contact tracing is not going to be enough. You have to have, some of the things we're doing with the nursing homes, some of the other things that you're doing with social distancing. But we've put in a lot of money for it. The counties have a lot of money to be able to do it. But, New York, they went through the boom and bust. It wasn't because of contact tracing. I mean, that's the way it was. I mean, they had massive infections. We've had a flatter curve, so those infections get spread out over a longer period of time. That was what everyone said we wanted, back in March. But we've put $138 million from the state. These guys have money. I know you've invested in contact tracing, I believe, as well. But at the end of the day, this is not a disease in which you get visibly sick, then you're contagious, so that if you isolate, contact trace, you do. Most of the people walking around with this either don't know they have it or have very mild symptoms and will never come in contact with the health. Another problem that you've seen is, particularly the younger folks aren't
listen again.
Contagious, so that if you isolate, contact trace, you do. Most of the people.
First off, not English. So if you isolate, contact trace, you do. You do what?
People walking around with this either don't know they have it or have very mild symptoms and will never come in contact with the health. Another problem that.
Okay, most people walking around with mild symptoms and will never come in contact with the help. I don't know what he's trying to say there. It's definitely not English, unless he's referring to the help being the contact tracers. The whole point of the contact tracing is letting people know that they might have COVID and not to be walking around with it. That's why you contact trace. And he said, oh, New York, they went through the boom and the bust, and they didn't use the contact tracing. Let's just take a look at New York. I just happen to have New York loaded up on the other page. I'm going to go there left-handed in just a second. Okay, so there's New York. That's what contact tracing does. See? They had a terrible high, and then they've kept it low, and they are contact tracing in New York. Now, I'm sure Florida's going to look just like that, where you have the big hump, and then it ramps down, and then that's the end of it. Let's just look at Florida quickly here. Oh, there's Florida. You know what? I think I have my screen reversed somehow. It must be a technical difficulty. So that is because they're not contact tracing, and their governor is a fucking idiot. Has nobody sat down and just explained why you contact trace? Very angry about all of this. People are dying. People are going to die because of this idiot. Okay, let's move on from that, because it just gets more and more silly. Okay, let's go. Here we go. This is, let me check in with you guys right now. Let me go over to the YouTube chat over here so I can see more of what's going on with you guys. How are you guys doing? I'm a little worked up today. I can speak Spanish better than him too, and I don't speak Spanish at all. Okay, let's see. Oh, wow, the YouTube chat just scrolls by, doesn't it? Now that everybody's in there. Too many people. I need some of you to stop being patrons. Jackie, did you watch Tom Hanks on the Today Show? He's also angry about it. Tom Hanks is incapable of getting angry. That was just acting. He's the nicest man in the world. Something about Jackie being strong. Hey, Kev, it's hot. You and the weather. Thank you, Collins Jackson. Don't know where that came from. Trust me, I am not. I mean, I am hot, but hey, I have a ceiling fan. Hold on. Boop. There we go. Okay. Yeah, there's next to no social distancing. Florida, when we saw those mask videos, people complaining about the mask, and Jesus doesn't want you to wear the mask because he made you breathing and all this sort of stuff, and you're going to die, and this study from 2005 or 2008 about the mask is going to kill you. A lot of that stuff is in Florida. Palm Beach, where, by the way, President Trump has a residence. Barb, go to bed soon. Don't worry about a packed chat. Okay. Hey, it's good to see you, by the way, Barb. Okay, and then an automatic tweet from me. So through the chat room here, whatever chat room you're in, you're going to see every 9 minutes something's going to pop up with the YouTube link. So I encourage people to go to YouTube to do the chat room on YouTube. It is the best. But if you don't want to chat, don't chat at all. Just enjoy. If you're watching and you're actually enjoying this interaction, good. I'm glad. We all need some entertainment every once in a while. Jana, I'm tired too. Rich, this chat is awesome. Is it? Good. I'm glad you guys are happy with it. I can't tell if you're sarcastic or not. There's no button for sarcasm in the chat. I'm not going to read your tweet, Jackie, because it's got the V word in it, and I just can't say it without getting in trouble. Here we go. Here's today, Mike Pence. I'm guessing he's going to say something about the president's bold leadership.
Here at the Department of Education, part of our ongoing effort to focus on a mission to save lives, meet the needs of our states, our healthcare workers, to protect the vulnerable, and to safely reopen America and reopen America's.
This is the MSNBC feed or the CNN? It's one of the two. Hold on. MSNBC. So it's the MSNBC feed because C-SPAN today, when Dr. Scarf got up there to do the charts, he's got lots and lots of charts and binders full of charts, they weren't showing the charts. Like C-SPAN is just texting it in at this point.
Schools.
I get it, Chris.
As you will hear today from Admiral Brett Giroir, at this point we have tested more than 39 million Americans. Among those, more than 3 million Americans have tested positive, and more than 1.3 million Americans have recovered.
Remember when we hit 1 million Americans and we're like, oh my God, it's 1 million. Now we're at 3. And it's not the lead story.
Sadly, more than 133,000 Americans have lost their lives, and our sympathies are with all of the impacted families.
Are they?
And while we mourn with those who mourn, because of what the American people have done, because of the extraordinary work of our healthcare workers around the country, we are encouraged that the average fatality rate continues to be low and steady. And at days earlier this week was actually 90% lower than at the height of this pandemic. Again,
that should not be encouraging. If we are sitting at a 4.5% fatality rate and cases keep skyrocketing, 60,000 new cases yesterday. 60,000. If 4.5% of those people die, that's too many Americans.
Credit.
But he's encouraged. They're encouraged.
To the sacrifices the American people have made, that the extraordinary work that our healthcare workers are doing. And we pledge this task force, working in partnership with governors all across the country, is going to continue to work our hearts out 24 hours a day to continue to keep our losses low. In just a few moments,
24 hours a day, they're going to work to keep our losses low, but we're opening up, people. Now, back to school.
Dr. Deborah Birx will outline the data that we're seeing around the country. We're tracking literally state by state, county by county. But as she will describe in a moment, we're actually seeing early indications of a percent of positive testing flattening in Arizona and Florida and Texas. Governors in each of those states have taken strong steps to flatten the curve. And again, as Dr. Birx will describe, we're beginning to see early indications that positivity is flattening. And in Arizona and Florida, we are beginning to see declining numbers of emergency room visits as well.
We are not flattening the positivity in any of those states. That is just ridiculous. In fact, Florida's positivity went up to 28%. 28% of the people getting tested in Florida right now are positive. Imagine how many asymptomatic people are walking around Florida because you can't get a test. It's way too busy at the testing sites in Florida. Imagine how many asymptomatic people are walking around when you've got 10,000 cases a day and you're testing. That means 30,000 tests a day because your positivity rate is, I have it, is 28%. Here, let's take a look at the positivity rate. Give me a second to drag this over here. This is the positivity rate we're talking about with the three states, Arizona, Florida, Texas. Arizona in green. Arizona's positivity rate is about 33% right now. Florida is ticking up to 28%. So this is that's yesterday's stats. So the new stats are higher than this. And Texas is up and down, but essentially just below 20%. There's no, I mean, if they're talking about flattening being at about 20%, that's way too high for where you want to be. So just nonsense. And all of that translates into unnecessary American deaths. And I don't understand how everyone just doesn't understand that. If we're at 5% and we have 60,000 new cases and we stay flat at 5%, what is that? Is that 3,000 cases a day? Somebody fact check me on that. No, I'm sorry, not cases a day. 3,000 deaths. So 3,000 of those people, is that right? 60, so 6,000, so yeah. Let's say 2,500 of those people are going to die. One day in the future, 2,500. Now, hopefully the rate flattens because more young people are getting it. Young people tend not to die from it, but they still die. Some of them will die. So hopefully it won't be 2,500.
We believe the takeaway from this for every American, particularly in those states that are impacted, is keep doing what you're doing because we're starting.
That's the takeaway. 60,000 new cases yesterday. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep right on trucking, Americans. How fucking stupid is this man?
To see the first indications that, as we were able to do in the Northeast, as we were able to do in New Orleans and Louisiana and Michigan and other places around the country, we're putting into practice those mitigation efforts. And we're beginning to see indications that they are having a good effect. We are focused on the states where more than half of the new cases have arisen: Texas, Arizona, Florida, and California, and have received encouraging reports even through this morning. Strong supplies of PPE in hospitals. Hospital capacity remains strong. The one need that we did hear from governors across the region is for personnel. And over the last week, working through FEMA, the Department of Defense, and HHS, we've been processing requests to deploy over 1,070 doctors and nurses and medical personnel. At this point, roughly 525 doctors and nurses are on the ground in Arizona, California, and Texas, and we're processing a request from Florida for an additional amount. We've made it very clear, as we, if you'll recall, we deployed at the president's direction.
Yeah, Rich, Brazil does keep count of their death toll, but they're way undercounting it because they just don't have the resources to test everybody. So if somebody dies, you die of pneumonia, you're probably not going to get tested. Plus, we don't even keep track of everybody because, as we've discovered now, all these people who had heart attacks over the past few months, we weren't testing them. It was just, oh, the guy had a heart attack. We didn't realize it was a blood-related, a vascular disease. We all thought it was a respiratory disease. It's both.
Active duty military medical personnel to New York, to New Jersey, to Connecticut, to Michigan, to Louisiana. And we're in the process of doing that again, just to make sure that that those dedicated doctors and nurses and healthcare workers.
Stephanie, if you're having trouble taking a test, all you got to do is just pay a kid to take it for you.
Have the relief that they need as we see cases rising in various communities across the Sun Belt, and we'll continue to work that. We had
Barbara's in Belgium, and she says, even though I don't know any of you in person and I'm in a different country, my heart bleeds every time I'm in this chat room. I feel so sorry for all Americans right now. Thank you, Barb. That's very nice to say. Most people, typically, they say they get nauseous whenever they're in this chat room.
A conference call yesterday with the nation's governors. We are in the process of
At Random has told me that it's because I eat on camera.
Continuing to send every week detailed county by county summaries, analysis, and recommendations to governors that are being implemented and well received. We also are issuing renewed guidance on preservation and reuse of PPE. Again, what we're hearing, and not just speaking to governors, but talking directly to hospitals, is that, frankly, because of the historic effort that President Trump implemented to spin up hundreds of millions of supplies of gloves and masks and face shields, and as well as the construction of ventilators. We now have 59,000 ventilators in our supplies. PPE, we hear, remains very strong, but we're encouraging healthcare workers to begin now to use some of the best practices that we learned in other parts of the country to preserve and to reuse the PPE supply.
So PPE supply, personal protective equipment for the healthcare workers, remains strong. But we're going to have you just keep reusing them. Best practices. The mask, the N95 mask, should be worn and discarded between patients because you're just spreading germs.
So our focus is to make sure our states have everything they need when they need it. And we're working closely with all the governors to make that a reality. But what brings us to the department.
What if it turns out that Rich is actually Marcy's kid? Dun, dun, dun!
Department of Education is, as we see to the needs of our states, and we focus on the health care of the American people, we're working to reopen America and to reopen America's schools. And yesterday, President Trump convened a summit of education leaders and health officials at the White House. And as the president made clear yesterday, it's time. It's time for us to get our kids back to school. And the summit yesterday gave us an opportunity to outline and to learn what we might be able to do that. In just a few moments, I'm going to ask.
No, it didn't. The Republican National Convention is coming up in Jacksonville, Florida. where the federal government is actually opening up a brand new test site there, and they're aiming to get like 5,000 to 10,000 people a day tested in Jacksonville because Jacksonville is on fire. And that's where they're going to have the Republican National Convention. The GOP is having their convention in Texas in person. But the speakers, the important people, they're not going to be there. They're going to be broadcasting via live stream. So pack it into the House, GOP members. But anybody important is going to be on the big screen.
Secretary DeVos to talk about the approach the Department of Education is taking to assisting local communities and states in bringing their schools back online. And also we hear from Dr. Bob Redfield, who has been literally since early in this pandemic providing guidance to schools and will be issuing additional guidance next week. I wouldn't want to pass the opportunity, though, not just as vice president, but as someone who's been married to a school teacher now for 35 years, just to say thank you to all the teachers out there. From early in this pandemic, teachers learned how to do the distance teaching and did a remarkable job, oftentimes having to care for their own families and make sure their own children's studies were happening. So to all of our America's teachers, we say thank you.
This is Casey's home state. They kicked the RNC out. That's absolutely true. They said, well, the RNC wasn't kicked out. The RNC spent about $30 million in North Carolina and in prep work to make the Republican National Convention happen. And then the president said, I'm not having it unless we can pack everybody in. And the Democratic governor of North Carolina said, well, we're going to have some social distancing. You know, we might not be doing well at that point. And here's where we are. That's North Carolina. So Trump said, okay, fine. We're going to go to Florida where they let us do whatever we want. We don't have to worry about no contact tracing.
We also want to say thank you to the parents who had to step in and become educators for all of their kids. It's really been remarkable when you see what our kids have been able to accomplish during this difficult time. But what we heard again yesterday from education officials and what we heard from the American Academy of Pediatrics, it's absolutely essential that we get our kids back into classroom for in-person learning. We can't let our kids fall behind academically, but it's important that the American people.
Here's the thing. Whom are they falling behind? Behind whom are they falling behind? If everybody stays on the same schedule, we're fine. You don't have to worry about your kid falling behind.
Remember that for children that have mental health issues, for special needs children, for nutrition, for children in communities facing persistent poverty, the school is the place where they receive all those services. And so this is not just simply about...
Producer Joanna, your opinion doesn't have to be humble because you're right. I agree with you.
Making sure our kids are learning and they're advancing academically, but for their...
Why can't we what exactly, Producer Rich?
Mental health, for their well-being, for their physical health, for nutrition. We got to get our kids back to school. And as you heard the president yesterday, and even again this morning, we're absolutely determined to work in partnership with our states to give the guidance for states and communities to be able to safely reopen our schools.
Speaking of,
the CDC will be issuing new guidance next week, part of a 5-part series of recommendations that will give all new tools to our schools. But what Dr. Redfield made clear yesterday, I'm sure he'll make clear again today, is we're here to help. We don't want federal guidance to be a substitute for state and local laws and rules and guidance. We're...
Why can't we let our kids fall behind? No, as long as all the kids are on the same schedule, no kids are falling behind. If you decide you're going to keep your kid out and you don't have distance learning capability of any kind, then your kid's going to fall behind because they're not going to learn the difference between they and they are. Or if you're Republican, they're never going to learn that anyway.
Here to assist with the shared objective that I think is shared by every parent in America, which is we want to get our kids back. We want to get them back in the classroom. We want to get our teachers back in the front of those classrooms. We got to get our kids learning in person once again.
That would be lovely.
As Congress is still in recess, but will gather again soon, we already are in discussions about additional potential support, although we were able to remind governors that $13.3 billion is available in the CARES Act for states to be able to assist them as they roll out and restart schools across the country. At the present moment, we learned yesterday that only 1.5% of those funds has been drawn down by states, and we encouraged governors to take advantage of that. Our objectives, as I said, are to save lives, meet the needs of our states and their healthcare workers, protect the most vulnerable, and safely reopen America and safely reopen our schools.
Well, yeah, those are all good options. Guys, let me know if the font over in the chat room needs to be smaller or bigger. You're probably all chatting within... I mean, do we even need the chat window anymore now that all the chats are going in between? Rich, I'm going to show your... Oh, wow. Danielle's good. Danielle, our moderator, is just letting things go through before I can even get to them and allow them. Thank you, Danielle. Danielle, everybody say thank you to Danielle for doing such a great job. And then tell me if we need that chat window or we should keep the chat window and make the font smaller. Still not big enough for you, Producer Joanna? Well, you know, as we get older, our eyesight begins to wane. You're almost 50. We're all almost 50. Still not big enough. Okay, I'm going to adjust the chat room size. Here we go.
And the good news is we are reopening America. The jobs report last Thursday spoke for itself. Nearly 5 million jobs created. And I can tell you, evidence all around the country is that the American people are finding a way to do their part, to put the health of their neighbors first, even while we all find a way to get back to work, to worship, and to school. And we all have a role to play to slow the spread, to protect the most vulnerable,
and to
safely reopen our country
now?
And our schools. And so I would just close before I turn the podium over to Dr. Birx for her report, just simply to say thank you to the American people. Thank you for what you've done so far.
Well, you only see it as too big, Green Room Bar, because Irish eyes are different. They're always smiling.
Thank you for the way you've put the health and well-being of not just family members and friends, but strangers, people you didn't even know first. And we just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. Keep heeding the guidance of state and local authorities. Practice good hygiene.
Oh, Producer Joanna meant her font in the credits at the very, very end. It's still not big enough for her. We'll pause on that. Is the chat room font too big? We're talking specifically about the chat over there on that side of the screen. Is it too big or too small? Let me know.
Wash your hands. Wear a mask wherever state and local authorities determine it's indicated, or wear a mask where you can't engage in social distancing. This is the role each of us can continue to play, and we're seeing some early indications in some of the most impacted states that Americans are doing just that. So we want to encourage you on and tell you that we're going to continue to do our part. And I'm just absolutely confident, just as we proved when this pandemic was striking.
If you're just joining us or you're just tuning in, today it's just Pence and Dr. Scarf and Dr. Admiral are going to be talking. We're covering that. We've kind of covered most of the interesting stuff already. We're just chatting. So jump on into the chat room or just watch the chat. We're experimenting with things. Producer Jackie says it's the font is huge, very bigly. Is it too big? That's what I'm asking. Some people are saying we're good because that's as big as the font gets. This is old people font. So if it's too big for you, let me know. Of course, it all depends on the size of your phone as well.
So deeply in the Northeast when it was striking in the Louisiana and in Michigan. The American people know what needs to be done, and we know we can do it. And we flattened the curve before. We slowed the spread before, and we can do it again. But we've got to all do our part.
We did not really slow the spread.
And we'll do it together. With that, Dr. Deborah Birx, and then we'll get a report from Admiral Giroir before we move on to other reports. Dr. Birx.
Good for you, Ruth Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. If I could have the first slide, please.
I can understand her. She doesn't need
I
to
know
take her
some of
mask
you
off.
do watch what I wear, so I'm wearing this specially today. This came from the Salt
So
River
it's-
Tribe. I just want to...
Okay, they're gonna go back. It's like I want y'all to look at. Boom, cut to the slide.
Mask can be a fashion statement. Out and speaking to individuals around the United States about
Yeah, Bev, it's fantastic.
the issues that they're facing with COVID-19, to be able to meet with communities, hospital personnel, African American communities, Hispanic
You guys go warm it up.
communities, and our Pride tribal nations. That was a privilege last week. I want to start with Arizona, just to pick up where the Vice President left off. That orange line is the number of tests performed, and the blue line is the test positivity. Now, this is at the level of the state. And Arizona does have 3 counties that we're tracking very closely. Obviously, you know, the largest one being Phoenix and Maricopa County. But this does show that the blue line, which is a 7-day average, and thank you to the data team for these wonderful slides, the 7-day average is showing some flattening, and they find that encouraging. Also equally encouraging at this point, because we know that the test positivity rate is the first thing to increase. And we're hoping that it heralds a stability in Arizona of at least reaching a plateau in their curve. The red line represents the emergency room visits for any of the COVID-like symptoms. And this is also an early indicator, and we find that encouraging. The next slide does show the counties that we're tracking, obviously the largest county being Maricopa County with the largest number of infections, but clearly there's issues in Yuma and Pima. The Vice President mentioned...
See, this chart is useless to us because of the population base. So this is number of cases, but everybody lives in Maricopa. So, okay, great, thanks. That's really helpful.
The weekly reports that go to governors. This is what the report looks like. Of course, they're full-side pages. This is Alaska's. On the front page is our interpretation of what we're seeing relevant to their epidemic, with specific recommendations related to where we see them as far as being in a danger zone. They are coded by yellow and red. And it follows that they see everything you're seeing on that first report in boxes, warning boxes, and then each of the counties are represented so that they have in one place.
And it's still not simplistic enough for Governor Ron DeSantis.
5 pages from the White House and task force that summarizes what we're seeing, and that goes out weekly. Next slide, please. This looks at Florida, and you can see in the same way the red line, early suggestions of decreasing emergency room visits for the symptoms of COVID, and some stability starting in that blue line, hoping that heralds a stability in the number of daily reported cases. We also understand that we went through...
This doesn't make sense to me, guys. See, the red is the 7-day rolling average. Yeah, you had a drop right here, but then you went right back up again here. That 7-day rolling average will go right back up again because of this here, that spike. And this was this holiday weekend? No, this is before the holiday weekend. So we don't even have the holiday weekend numbers in. So those will probably increase as well. So this is just cherry picking, and I don't see it. I don't know where they're getting these from. These are usafacts.org, so we'll keep an eye on those, or totally forget.
Holiday weekend, and holiday weekends can impact datas on both ends, under-reporting through the weekend, and then catch-up reporting on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday after holiday weekend. Next slide, this shows the counties of Florida that we're tracking. These are the top 10 counties in Florida, and you can see each of them have a different profile. I want to call your attention to the counties that are across the bottom there that are more difficult to see. Some of those represent Jacksonville and other large metros, including Tampa. When the governor talks about how they were steady and low for a long period of time after reopening, this is where that is reflected for almost 5 weeks after reopening. Clearly, there was something that happened, though, and those that we're looking into across the board, because whatever happened in Florida happened across the Sun Belt, and that all of the curves and all of the findings are mirrored. If you remember early on in March and April, we were talking about First, the New York Metro, followed by Boston, followed by Philadelphia, then Chicago. And New Orleans was with the New York Metro. And so it was a series of individual curves. In this case, whatever occurred almost simultaneously across the South. And so we're investigating that very closely to really see the etiology behind that, because that can help us as an early warning signal, but also help us in guidance to the American people of what we're asking them to do. Next slide, Texas.
I can tell you exactly what happened there. Let's go back. Here's suddenly things start to ramp up right here. Here's Memorial Day right here. Memorial Day weekend, and then things begin to ramp up universally in Florida. Huh. How did that happen?
Simultaneously across.
I don't know that for sure. Nobody knows that for sure. But this is the same graph that you see in Arizona and Texas and all of those states where you saw everybody partying on Memorial Day because we'd beaten the virus.
Across the South. And so we're investigating that very closely to really see the etiology behind that, because that can help us as an early warning signal, but also help us in guidance to the American people. I
just saw somebody in the chat room say their neighbor died because of a heart attack because they talked him out of going to the hospital. Oh, it was Dr. Howard. Yeah. This is a despicable disease. And if they did that recently after it's been known that it's a vascular disease, then shame on them.
Of what we're asking them to do. Next slide, Texas. And you can see Texas is in a similar situation with their blue line, and we're watching this very closely across Texas. Next slide. But I think all of you know that there's a series.
And notice that one, they didn't put a red line on the ER visits.
Of major metros in Texas with significant increase in cases from Houston to Dallas to San Antonio to El Paso.
Just like I was saying, here's Memorial Day weekend, and we begin to ramp. About a week later, things begin to go astray. And of course, the way the virus works is exponential, so you tell two friends, and they tell two friends, and so on, and so on, and so on.
In McClellan area. And so the governors get this type of report with specific recommendations, and then finally California, where you can see, next slide, thank you. Again, a long time of stability, but then this increase in the number of test positives and rapid increase in cases. Next slide. And you can see the majority of the issue is in the Los Angeles area, although we see this through Riverside, Imperial, Sacramento, and now San Francisco with increased number of cases. So I want to finish with where the vice president started about the sacrifices of the...
At the same time, they're talking about an increased number of cases. We've got cases. We're having a decreased number of cases in the chat room. Goodbye, Casey. Have a good dinner. Enjoy. Never mind.
The American people, because in that recommendations are very clear recommendations that when you have...
Last figure I saw on excess deaths was 50 to 60,000 since the beginning of the crisis. So deaths, for example, deaths where, like Dr. Howard's friend or neighbor, somebody dies of a heart attack at home that may or may not have died of a heart attack anyway, but you have to look at how many people would die of a heart attack during a typical April. And there's been a number of deaths above that because we believe COVID causes heart attacks and strokes. And the scary part is a lot of people are going to suffer consequences well into the future. We think. We don't know. We don't know anything about this. Just as we're finding out now that the whole immunity concept is ridiculous. We may be living with this for the rest of our lives, people.
County with these types of cases, we are recommending everyone using a face covering. And I think the studies now that have been done showing that cotton face coverings work, that does open up the ability for us all to have individualized face coverings that express our personality. But in addition, I think the work that these governors have done to and ask the American people to stop going to bars, to close the bars, to move to outdoor dining, to decrease any kind of indoor gatherings, again, to all of the Americans out there that are in these 4 states and the states that have, in the report, we're in the red zone because there's a series of other states that we have.
Jimmy, you're mistaken. It's the masks that are fabricated. That's what she's talking about.
In that zone is really asking the American people in those counties and in those states to not only...
Yeah, but Dr. Howard, when you're COVID negative, that's a 30% chance with the tests that we have, especially the older tests, of being a false positive. You know what I'm saying?
Use the face coverings, not going to bars, not going to indoor dining, but really not gathering in homes either, and decreasing those gatherings back down to our phase 1 recommendation, which was 10 or less. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice.
Takeaway from that is Dr. Scarf just said, hey, get a nice design on your mask, and B, don't gather even in home. Don't stop having gatherings, people, which is 10 is too many. Household members only. If you want to gather at someone's home, do it outside in the driveway. Do it outside in the backyard where you're not getting in each other's spaces.
President.
Report on testing.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Since we're bragging on our face coverings, this was made by a small religious community in Pennsylvania who were helped by the Public Health Service, and they hand sewed these for a lot of our officers to match our operational dress, those blue uniforms. So I wear this
Ruth Ann, why can't the experts and Trump get on the same page? Trump doesn't read, so he's just on his own page. In fact, there are no pages.
proudly, and I think of that community every single day.
That's an excellent point, Bev. We should be back on phase 1. That's Dr. Scarf saying we need to be back in phase 1. But she has no power. And I honestly believe, as much confidence as I've lost in her since day one, because she can be sycophantic, I do believe, and I hope I'm right, that she's being sycophantic in an effort to stay there, because she does push things the right way. She does. The president, for whatever reason, seems to listen to her a little bit. But the trouble is every time he seems to do that a little bit, he just blows it off and goes the other direction. She really hasn't had the effect that she thinks she's having if she's doing the sycophant route in order to stay there. I mean, anyway, I had a joke there, but I'm just not even going to go there.
Everybody pitching in across America to help us all. So in terms of testing, I want to cover 3 quick topics. First one is just where we are numerically. Vice President has already said we are now topping 39 million tests across the country. The states really crushed their goal in June. The state goals was about 12.9 million in June. CDC numbers have finalized that at about 16.5 million tests for June. So congratulations to almost all of the states who made their goal, exceeded their goal. We're doing very well right now, between 600,000 and 700,000 tests per day. We did top the 700,000 mark last week, and we're averaging about 620,000, 630,000 tests per day. We continue to ship. We are ripe with swab.
Trump has been saying 40 million for about a week now. We're still not at 40 million.
In media, so the states tell us what they need. We work with them to set those goals based on their state testing plans. After technical assistance by the CDC in my office, FEMA.
Oh, I just watched that. Well, can we go to the next one then? Hold on. YouTube doing its thing. Can I just go to the next? That was 8 a.m. Can I just go to the next one? Okay, you guys talk amongst yourselves.
It's hard to believe that Brava can go from 0 to 500 degrees in under 1 second. Or that it precisely cooks 3 different ingredients at the same time. It's hard to believe.
I don't know what's going on there, folks. Let's go. I'm not sure there was much. Oh, they took questions. They did take questions at the end of it. There might be something interesting there for us. Let me figure out where that would be then. That was 8 a.m. So we might get lucky with Andrea this morning. Was she 9 a.m.?
Testing flattening in Arizona, Florida, and Texas, recent hotspots. This as President Trump is turning a critical public health debate about reopening.
Oh, you know what? I already anticipated this. I do have the C-SPAN feed queued up. Give me a second to find it. And then we're going to go right on with this. The C-SPAN. Well, I'll just find it again because it's here. And what? Holy smokes! Is this? Hold on. There's a Kellyanne I don't even know about. Is it happening right now? What is going on? This is. Oh, this is exciting, kids. Hold on. I didn't even know this existed.
Hello,
you guys were
everyone.
keeping this a secret.
Good afternoon.
Okay. So this has got to be from today, is it? Oh, I'm going to verify that. I don't want to make you folks rewatch more Kellyanne Macaroni than you need to. Kellyanne, Kaylee. Same thing, really. Let's be honest. Okay, let me go to C-SPAN and see if this is from today. Okay. Yeah, this was just a recently announced one. If it is, in fact, let's see. President Trump holds joint news White House press secretary. Yeah, okay. Wow, I totally missed this. Sorry, that's what happens when you do an audition like that. So, you guys want to watch this? It's going to be more interesting than Vice President. Okay, Kim says yes, we're going to do it.
Today, President Trump welcomed to the White House President Lopez Obrador of Mexico. The meeting reaffirmed the incredibly strong ties between President Obrador and President Trump. The leaders noted that many people have bet against their ability to work together in a strong and productive fashion, but rest assured, they were...
Like, what difference does that make if some people have thought they can't work together? Who cares? Oh, we show them by cooperating.
Work together, and they work together well. The U.S.-Mexico relationship has never been stronger or more productive, thanks to the leadership of President Trump. The USMCA, in particular, is
again, you can't quantify either of those.
A major win for...
Well, you can quantify productivity, but it's you can't. I mean, it's down right now, is what I'm saying.
For our two countries and for America's workers. Under the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, more than 4 million
It's a good choice. Note from producer Joanna. Her dad had to take multiple tests. So 40 million tests is not really 40 million people. When you have it, you have to take multiple tests before you're allowed to go.
Manufacturing jobs will be regained.
And if you're asking about the stat on how many people we've actually tested, the United States is one of the few countries that doesn't submit that information to our world in data. I might be able to find it somewhere for you there.
That were lost under NAFTA. This will be a huge influx of American jobs that were lost under the failed NAFTA trade deal that went into effect. In addition, tens of thousands of manufacturing plants were lost because of NAFTA. We want to bring those on shore, and the USMCA will go a long way in bringing back those manufacturing plants and those millions of jobs that were lost under NAFTA. NAFTA was a bad deal for the American worker because it left American workers behind. Many politicians forgot the damage wrought by disastrous trade deals such as NAFTA, but President Trump did not forget. It took this president to change the status quo, renegotiate NAFTA, and secure a better deal for the American worker. And here's why. The U.S.
Okay, she just said renegotiate NAFTA, which is against the party line. They didn't renegotiate NAFTA, they canceled NAFTA. And now they have the USMCA, which is completely different in respect to about 4% of the actual words. Most of it is exactly the same. Bye, Barb. Have a great night.
USMCA alone will create 176,000 American jobs. We believe the other trade deals that this president has negotiated will add to that number and help undo a lot of what NAFTA has done. The USMCA will boost American manufacturing, including wages, new jobs, and exports. And the USMCA will create 76,000 auto manufacturing jobs, crucial to the well-being of this country. The USMCA...
That's awesome, because they're going to need to replace the 76,000 jobs that, was it American Air? U.S. Air is laying off? United Air? At random, who's laying off all those people?
USMCA is good for business. As President Trump rebuilds the strongest, most inclusive economy in history, the USMCA will help jumpstart...
Sorry, Ruth Ann. Who said that? Couldn't take it right now. Robin. Sorry, Robin.
Our economy. The USMCA is projected to increase GDP by $235 billion. This means jobs, jobs, jobs. And during today's meeting between the presidents, one official from Mexico noted that many considered the USMCA an 80-20 probability. Now it is 100% certainty. And with that, I'll take questions. Yes.
Okay, two questions for you. The first is, President Trump hasn't taken...
This administration spends all their time criticizing what other people say. and saying that it doesn't matter. And then when something actually does go their way, all they can do is quote the people who said it wasn't going to go their way.
Questions from White House reporters in 2 weeks. While we always enjoy talking to you.
Thank you, Rich Mack, and not at random for getting that information. It's United Airlines, who's laying off how many people, Rich Mack? At random, you can still beat them.
This White House likes to say the president is the most...
Okay, this is Paula.
Yes.
We love her.
Okay, 2 questions for you. The first is, President Trump hasn't taken questions from White House reporters in 2 weeks. While we always enjoy talking...
So he hasn't taken questions in 2 weeks from the White House reporter. And if you guys remember, if you were paying attention and you listened to me, he took one set of questions in June. So since the end of May, he's let the reporters ask him questions one time. We're July 8th.
This White House...
36,000 layoffs. Thank you, David. Thanks for nothing at random.
Likes to say the president is the most accessible in history, so why hasn't he answered questions for 2 weeks amid a pandemic?
This president routinely answers questions. He's more accessible than any of his predecessors. I'm sure you'll be hearing from him soon. He's always up to the job, but he's hard at work in the Oval Office.
And also, is the administration retaliating against Dr.
But he's been
Fauci for
golfing.
publicly contradicting the president? Today, he was told to come here to the White House for the task force meeting, which meant he could not answer questions from reporters.
Look, that's a decision for the task force as to who appears at the briefings, but you've heard from a lot of our doctors. Today you heard from Dr. Birx. Dr. Fauci's appeared on 6 TV programs since June.
Too fucking many, Kevin. Yeah, that's true. Whatever it is. Oh, the people who are laid off. Yeah. But the travel industry has been absolutely decimated. And I thought for a second I would have to fly down to LA today and did not want to do it. It's a 18 to 19 hour drive, and that's if you don't stop. That's if you just go. I'm willing to do that instead of hopping onto a plane. And a plane's only going to cost the following day I could have flown to LA. Kevin Lee daughter and I could have flown to LA for about $200. That's together because I have I picked this year to finally get myself a companion pass. I've flown enough last year, so Kevin Lee daughter gets to be my companion. She flies free with me. And a year when now, for the first time in our lives, it's not a good idea to fly.
First, you just heard from him in a task force briefing on June 26th, and he participated in the vice president's governor's briefing
get back to
on
work.
COVID-19 on June 29th. So you've heard from him recently, along with the rest of our doctors in the past 5 days. Dr. Hahn's been on TV 6 times as well.
The president still has confidence in Dr. Fauci.
The president has confidence in the conclusions of our medical experts, but it's up to him to determine what to do with that information and to take what we hear from Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, and others, and take what he values in their opinion and come to the ultimate consensus that's best for this country. Caitlin.
I have 2 questions as well. One, what is it exactly in the CDC guidelines that the president doesn't like?
Yeah, so the CDC guidelines that the president mentioned today, I would note that it was emphasized by Dr. Redfield that he doesn't want these guidelines to be a reason for schools to not reopen. They're not.
There's nothing in the guidelines. There's nothing in the guidelines that says don't open schools. Please don't do this if you're in a hot spot. There's nothing in there.
Not requirements, and they're not prescriptive, and that's per the CDC director.
Right, but what is it that the president thinks is too strict and too expensive and too impractical, as I think the word is?
Marcy, is it tougher to get items in Hawaii? Like you can't go to the store and get... here we can't get, for example, Lysol wipes. That's just universal. Soap is hard to find. Hand soap. Everybody's washing their hands so much that we just haven't caught up with production. There's a few items like that. But because of the decreased travel, is less freight getting over to the islands?
One of the things is in the guidelines, which I would note that in these guidelines there are 28 implicit acknowledgments that these guidelines aren't even feasible. 18 times it's mentioned that some of this might not be possible, and 9 times it's mentioned that some of this might not be feasible. So that's embedded into the guidelines, and one specific example I'll give you is on food services. Have children bring their own meals as feasible. Well, there are 22 million children in this country who depend on these meals at schools, who depend on access to nutrition.
Nowhere in there does it says that these ideas might not be feasible. It says if feasible. And yes, implied by that, but that's not the takeaway from that. And President Trump didn't read all the guidelines anyway. He looked at the first page. I'll pull them up for you.
In schools. So that's one example.
So is that just one thing that the president doesn't like? Is there anything else?
Well, there are several that are in there, but we need to make sure as the American...
I'm wondering what they're going to change is my point. Really.
Well, you'll see, because as the Vice President said, the CDC will come out with new guidelines, additional guidelines. There will be, I think, 5, he said, and you'll see those when they come out.
Okay, so my second question, just really quickly, is the president and the CDC clearly don't seem to be on the same page on what the guidance is, what he is hoping they put out, what the CDC is actually putting out. So why doesn't the president just go to these task force meetings so then he can talk about it with them? Because our reporting is that he hasn't been to one since April.
So I would note that the CDC is very much on the same page as the president, which is why you heard the CDC director today underscore these are not prescriptive, these are not requirements, and that there will be supplemental guidelines. So they are on the same page. The president's routinely briefed about the coronavirus each and every day. The relevant information is brought to him on the big decisions, and then he moves forward in the way that's best for our country. Jill.
Every day.
Thanks, Haley. So just following up on those new CDC guidelines that we're told are coming out next week, did the White House pressure the CDC to change public health guidelines that were reached in accordance with medical professionals because the president doesn't like them?
No, not at all. But the president made his opinion quite clear publicly this morning on Twitter for all to see. And we would note that guidelines, and I would underscore the American Academy of Pediatrics, because it is an organization that's made up of 67,000 pediatricians that they represent. They are very adamant about kids needing to go back to school, and they said school policies must be flexible and nimble in responding to new information, and administrators must be willing to refine approaches when specific policies are not working. Policies should be practical, feasible, and appropriate for child and adolescent's development stage.
I don't know what guidelines she's reading from, because the guidelines that came out recently, which it's just a checklist, and it says nothing in there about have students bring their own lunches if feasible. There are existing guidelines. I'll show you guys here. This is what I'm seeing on my other screen here. It's going to be super small for most of you unless you're watching on a TV like one of the smart people. So it's about 9 pages. If the president did read the checklist guidelines, the new stuff that's been released, this was what he's upset about. Lowest risk, students and teachers engage in virtual only classes, activities, and events. Basically saying the lowest risk is if they just stay home and watch their computer. And the highest risk is full-sized in-person classes, activities, and events, which is what Trump wants. He wants schools to be fully opened. No ifs, ands, or buts. But there's nothing in here that Kaylee's talking about, unless there's some more CDC guidelines out there. It's certainly not available on the CDC website unless I don't know how to search the web, which is also possible.
Social distancing guidelines in school, things that are included in those guidelines now, like placing desks apart from each other, staggering school times. She gets those elements of it?
So I'm not going to get into each and every element and where he stands on it. The president wants us to go back to school safely. Our children depend on it. These schools are essential, and I think he stands on the side of parents across this country who want to see their kids back in school, who want to see, make sure that their kids don't fall behind in education. Yes, Chris.
Thank you, Kaylee. By this point in the 2016 campaign, President Trump had been talking about what would ultimately become the USMCA for more than 9 months. So when do you think we can expect President Trump to detail his priorities for a second term?
I think you hear him talk about it quite often. More trade deals are on the horizon from this president, lower taxes, more funding for our schools. One announcement that I do have for you is that in CARES Act 4, he's
more funding from the schools after he just threatened to withhold funding this morning from the schools if they don't open up. He tweeted that, if you hadn't heard about it, but go look it up if you want to.
Looking to substantially bump up money for education, but at the same time understand that this money should go to students. So that's one priority we're looking at more in the immediate.
So there was, you're talking about the number of press secretaries, Sean Spicer, then we had Scaramucci for 10 days, then we had Grisham, and then we had her. And I can't think of a fifth, but I think that was it. Was there somebody? Oh, no, of course. Sarah Huckabee Sanders. So that's 5.
Term, supporting our schools, supporting our families. He's talked about payouts, stimulus payouts to Americans that worked very well the first time. It's something he's mentioned for a phase 4. He's talked about payroll tax holiday, which would be a big tax break for America's workers. So those are a few in the immediate term, and you'll be hearing a lot more about a second term in the coming months.
Do you think
he still hasn't come up with anything for a second term. He still had, and remember, we watched Eric Bolling ask him the other day, hey, I'm going to give you a second shot at what you want to do for your second term. Same nonsense.
Might detail some of those priorities in his speech this Saturday at the rally in New Hampshire.
So I don't want to get ahead of his speech this Saturday, but you'll certainly be hearing in coming speeches more about the president's vision for the second term. Building the economy is one thing that he mentioned just
same as a first
this week. You know, he brought the hottest economy in modern history once. He wants to do
That's a
do
lie.
it again. He did that through deregulation, through lower taxes, and that led to historic low unemployment for Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, disabled, our veterans, and those are the kind of policies, conservative policies, he's looking at for a second term.
And anything that you could say to Republicans on Capitol Hill who have talked to reporters and said that they would like President Trump to perhaps be a bit more forceful about what exactly he would intend to do?
Well, the president's been very clear. I mean, I just mentioned to you what he wants in CARES Act 4. He's mentioned some other things, so I think he's very vocal about what he wants, and you'll be hearing more from him. Justin.
Thanks. I had one on Hong Kong, but I first wanted to just follow on the rally question. Just before you came out, the director of the Tulsa Health Department said that the president's rally very likely contributed to a surge in coronavirus cases in the city. We know that allies and advisors of the president also have tested positive since Tulsa, and in New Hampshire, masks are recommended but not required. So I'm wondering, first, why the president continues not to require masks at his rallies, considering we've seen the public health outcomes that come from it, and whether that or other changes are something that he might look at going forward.
The president's been operating in accordance with CDC guidelines, recommended but not required. But as he said recently, if he weren't tested every day and he was in a situation where he couldn't distance, he would wear masks. We hand them out. They're handed out by the campaign, rather, at these events, and there's ample hand sanitizer, and it's people's individual choice as to whether to go.
And could the president not just say, hey, everybody, please keep your mask on. I'm up here on this. I get my own podium. You notice now they give other people other podiums. Everybody else has to talk at another podium. He gets his own podium now. That's how insulated he is.
The response to the Tulsa Health Director sort of pointing out.
I would just say I have no data to indicate that on my end, but it's the decision of individuals whether to go. We encourage the wearing of masks. As the president said, if he couldn't distance, he would, but it's the individual choice of the person.
And then on Hong Kong, I know the Chief of Staff and National Security Advisor have talked in the last couple of days indicating that the president might both sign the bill that was passed by Congress last week and hinted at additional action. So I'm wondering both if you have any updated guidance on the timing of those things, but also we've heard concern from U.S. companies that sort of
Ruth Ann, that's the kind of thing that somebody like me or ASIN or Aaron Rupar or one of the people who sort of pay attention to all this stuff isn't getting paid much for it. And not that I don't appreciate what you guys are saying. What I'm saying is, and ASIN is constantly retweeted by everybody. In fact, oh my God, ASIN was actually referred to by the president the other day because he tweeted that tweet where Trump says swipping or something like that during the July the 4th firework extravaganza. And Trump railed at him and blamed CNN and Snopes for attacking him. But in fact, CNN and Snopes defended him, saying that the tweet was out of context, the video that ASIN took. I have to talk to ASIN about that because I wonder if he was trying to make Trump say something he didn't or make it seem that way, or that he, like me, thought it was the swiffing when he was supposed to say sweeping that was funny. So I'll talk to ASIN about that.
Aggressive sanctions that would be unlocked under the latest bill could hurt their businesses in Hong Kong and China. And so I'm wondering if you could kind of talk through the administration's thoughts about balancing, how aggressively you would be sanctioning Chinese officials versus U.S. business interests.
So I'm not going to get ahead of the president on what our actions on China will be, but you will be hearing about some upcoming actions that pertain to China, so I can confirm that. Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Kaylee. So still on Hong Kong, this morning Robert O'Brien said that China has basically annexed Hong Kong. Can you explain what he means by that and what the administration plans to do about it?
I think his words are quite clear. We've been quite clear from this podium that Hong Kong's special status is at risk because of the Chinese actions.
So just to follow up on annexation, what are the administration's plans on actual plans of annexation from the Israeli on parts of the West Bank?
So I won't get ahead of the president on those actions. Yes. Jeff.
Thanks, Kaylee. You mentioned education before. The president said in his tweet this morning that he might take funding away. First of all, why would he want to take funding away from schools? Second of all, which funding is he referring to specifically? And thirdly, what authority does he have to do that, given that most public schools are funded by local property taxes?
So I would note that what I said to Kristen just a bit ago, he wants to increase funding and cares for
forest to prevent
education,
forest fires.
but he's
True.
looking at potentially redirecting that to make sure it goes to the student, and it is most likely tied to the student and not to a district where schools are closed. And I would note that he said this is something he may consider in the tweet.
No, I heard what you said with regard to CARES, but with regard to the president, he was saying that as I guess a threat if Democratic governors or officials don't open schools in the way that he wants them. I'm just wondering, again, what authority he would use to do that and which specific funds he's targeting.
Yeah, not in the ways that he'd want them to open. He wants them to reopen altogether. He wants students to be welcomed back to these schools because there are real consequences. Let's be clear about what we're talking about here. We're talking about a situation where you have the American Academy of Pediatrics talking about the negative impacts of children not in schools. Learning deficits is among them. There's increases in child and adolescent physical or sexual abuse because you don't have people reporting and notifying, like teachers and PE teachers and school personnel notifying health departments when they see signs of this. You have increased substance abuse, depression, and suicidal ideation, and this is from the American Academy of Pediatrics. So the president, he's going to push schools to reopen. These are grave consequences. Even CNN reporting that experts believe that the recent decline in calls to child abuse and neglect hotlines might really mean more cases are going unnoticed. This is unacceptable, and our schools are essential, and our teachers are essential workers, and he wants them to open, and that's why he's speaking out so strongly about this.
Would he accept, Kaylee, that the schools and the districts that are looking at this want to do it in the safest way possible, and that's why there seems to be some disagreement on how to do that most safely?
Well, the president will always stand up to teachers unions who want to keep these schools closed, because what is best for the child is for these schools to be open. That is pretty clear. Ebony.
You want to keep the schools closed?
Ebony.
Thank you, Kaylee. Just following on from Jeff's question, New York City officials today said that schools would go back in the fall on a staggered schedule of 2 to 3 days a week. I'm wondering if that's something that the administration and the president supports.
So I haven't spoken to him about that plan in particular, but it's encouraging anytime you see that some kids will be welcomed back onto the campus. Haven't spoken to him specifically about the New York scenario.
Another question. The Supreme Court is expected to rule tomorrow on whether or not the president can keep his financial records secret. I'm wondering if the court rules against the president, he will be happy to hand over his records to Congress and the Manhattan District Attorney.
So since that's a hypothetical, I won't answer that, and I'll wait to get back with you guys tomorrow after we see that ruling.
And the it's Mazars, his accountants, that have the taxes in one of the cases, so he doesn't have to hand over anything. The taxes are already out there,
which we hope is in the favor of the president. Yes.
Yes, 2 questions for you, Kaylee. Thank you. Did the president ask the president of Mexico if he would pay for the wall, and what happened to that threat?
So that discussion did not come up when I was in the room.
And the second question, is the president still filing documents this week to be able to resign DACA once again and start the legal process?
Yeah, no announcements on that front, but when we have an announcement, you'll be the first to know. Chanel?
Thank you, Kaylee. Going back to the executive orders that Meadows had mentioned earlier this week, is President Trump going to discuss with President Obrador any details about this executive order as he drafts it up, or as he...
So in the discussions I was a part of, there is not an executive order discussed, but there will be some executive orders this week.
Can you give us a preview of what they might entail?
No preview, but there will be some this week. Yeah.
What about Justin Trudeau and his non-appearance today?
Oh, sorry, guys. I was writing something to Ace, and I didn't realize that OAN was doing their thing.
Again, and start the legal.
Sorry, let's go back, because this will be the wrap-up. No, it's not. Wow, she's got a lot of time left in this. So she's going to OAN before the end of the conference. That's new.
Process.
Yeah, no announcements on that front, but when we have an announcement, you'll be the first to know. Chanel?
Thank you, Kaylee. Going back to the executive orders that Meadows had mentioned earlier this week, is President Trump going to discuss with President Obrador any details about this executive order as he drafts it up, or as he...
So in the discussions I was
She also has a mask on. She's got to pull down, but that's the first time I've seen OAN with a mask.
a part of, there is not an executive order discussed, but there will be some executive orders this week.
Can you give us a preview of what they might entail?
No preview, but there will be some this week. Yeah.
What about Justin Trudeau and his non-appearance today? What messaging does that give to the rest of the world as they're watching this USMCA for us?
Okay.
Producer Joanna is our local fashion expert. If a woman is wearing something, she will comment on it. So all questions regarding style can be addressed to Producer Joanna.
Canada was unable to travel because of the restrictions they have in their country with regard to COVID.
Yes. Yes. I'm Lucia with Pepe. I wanted to ask you to confirm if President Trump and President Lopez Obrador talked about immigration at all in their meeting today.
It came up briefly, and just noting the great cooperation that has been had between Mexico and the United States. Mexico mobilizing those troops to the border went a very long way. President Obrador has been a great partner to this country, both on the USMCA and with regard to immigration and with regard to drug interdiction. A lot of lives have been saved thanks to President Trump and President Obrador's cooperation.
But there's nothing new that President Trump asked President Lopez Obrador to do on immigration or the border.
So I won't get into their private details and private conversations other than to note that there's been great cooperation, and that was noted today.
She literally just asked a question or answered a question about their private conversation. Doesn't want to talk about anything else, so she just says, I'm not going to get into it. She just got into it.
Yeah. Yes.
Thanks, Kaylee. Two questions. Following up on Jeff's question, you have, from behind the podium, talked about the importance of federalism, local and state officials being able to decide what to do with their own residents. How come when it comes to schools, the president is threatening schools, saying that if they don't follow his guidance in terms of what they should do in reopening, that he's...
That's an excellent point. Where are all the states' rights peoples right now? You can't tell us what to do. And states actually pay for about 90% of the schools' budgets. The Department of Education federally doesn't provide a whole lot of money. Well, it is a lot of money when you add it all up, but you know what I'm saying. 90% of the budget for schools comes from your property taxes.
Going to threaten their funding. Why is that federalism principle not being followed?
Because he thinks that funding should go to the child. It should be there for children who are going to school. Keeping schools closed down is an untenable prospect, and if this administration is going to stand for anything, it's going to be standing against child abuse, which reporting falls when schools are closed. It's going to be standing for educational equality, because as noted by McKinsey and Company, I was reading some very detailed studies today that learning loss will probably be greatest if schools stay closed among low-income Black and Hispanic students. This president fights for school choice. He fights for opportunity, and he'll fight for schools to stay open.
And again, rather than fighting for school choice, how about we make the public schools better?
Those disproportionately impacted are minority communities. High school dropout rates, that's another thing. We know that in the wake of school closures after Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Maria, 14 to 20% of students never returned to school, and there's an estimate that 2 to 9% of high school students could drop out as a result of a permanent shutdown in schools. Our schools are important.
Well, we don't have a permanent shutdown, so we're good.
They have to stay open.
And after the hurricane, of course, they didn't have distance learning like they do now.
They are essential, and the president will stand on the side of our children.
Question,
and if they're not our children, he'll put them in cages. So what are you going to do?
In a recent book that was written, a quote attributed to one of your colleagues, Katie Miller, saying, if you come to America, you should assimilate. Why do we need to have Little Havana? Is that a statement that this administration, this White House stands behind?
So Jacob Soboroff has written a new book. He's a reporter for NBC. He was very integrated in the kids in cages situation. He was down there covering it. He's written a book about it, and in it, Katie Miller, who works for the Trump administration, and she's moving on to another position in the Trump administration. She's still around. The quote from the book was he had a conversation with Katie Miller, and she said, I don't know why these people are coming to America and they don't want to assimilate. Why do we have to have Little Havana? She said some more stuff, too, that was nauseating. But anyway, that's the question.
So I spoke to Katie before coming.
Bye, Green Room. Good to see you.
Out here, and she says that those quotes are not true as described in the book. And I'll tell you this, that there is no greater ally of the Cuban community than President Trump. He loves the Cuban community. He's moved his residence down to Florida, South Florida in particular.
I'm sure there's a lot of... He wants to be close to the Cubans. That's why he's living in a private club in Mar-a-Lago. That's because of the Cubans.
And there's no greater advocate against socialism than the Cuban community in this country, and then this president who said,
I'm a big fan of the Native Americans. I live less than 10 miles from a casino.
America will never be a socialist country. Yes.
Thank you. So the city of Houston just a little while ago canceled the Texas Republican convention because of COVID concerns. Are there any fresh thoughts about scaling back Jacksonville?
No, we're still...
Wow. Okay, so that's news. Breaking. Earlier in the day that I didn't even know about. So yeah, Houston has canceled the RNC apparently. In the RNC that I told you about, where they were still going to have it and everyone was going to be gathered inside, but anybody important was just going to appear via video.
Moving forward with Jacksonville, it'll be a safe event, it will be a good event, and it will be up to the RNC as to how those details are hashed out.
Can I ask an education question? Not...
Jackie, that's an excellent question. Mar-a-Lago is a club and a residence, but it can't be both. And I don't know if we've ever decided, and by we, I mean West Palm Beach. Right? No, I guess it's just Palm Beach, not West Palm Beach. Is it West Palm Beach? No, it can't be. It's right on the water, so it's got to be Palm Beach. Anyway, yeah, they haven't decided. Is it West Palm? Anyway.
Lower school, but colleges and universities. A couple of them at least are challenging the ICE ruling having to do with visas for foreign students when the universities are not holding in-person classes. And I'm wondering if that is aimed at pressuring colleges to fully open that feel maybe that it's not safe to do so.
Yeah, so here's what's going on. ICE, who for some reason is responsible for foreign students instead of immigration, INS, they've said that if your university, if you're coming here to study at university, and your school is going to remain closed like Harvard, it's just going to be online, then your visa's done. You're out of here. And you can take the online classes back in your native country. This is what they're saying. No fault of the kids. And of course, things could change and Harvard could decide to open up for the spring quarter, which would then cost the people, again, to come back. Now, most foreign students who come to the United States are fairly well off to begin with. They have to be in order to get here. But this is going to affect a huge number of students. And there's a goodly number of them that don't have the resources to go traveling back and forth. But anyway, it's just there's no reason for it. Those ones, especially the ones who are of wealthy means, they're pumping money into our economies. That's literally money from outside the country being spent in America. They're bringing money into America, completely unlike the tariffs. He's always said China never gives us 10 cents. This is money from China. This is money from all the other countries in the United States, and for some reason, we want to keep these people out.
I think the policy speaks for itself. You don't get a visa for taking online classes from, let's say, University of Phoenix. So why would you if you were just taking online classes generally? And I would note with regard to Harvard and MIT suing over this, and all due respect to my former alma mater, perhaps the better lawsuit would be coming from students who have to pay full tuition with no access to in-person classes to attend. Yes?
When it comes to the flexibility with the Jacksonville event, could that flexibility include moving events elsewhere if the case counts continue to rise in Florida, even possibly back to Charlotte if the cases stabilize there or go down?
I'll leave that to the president and not engage in hypotheticals, but he's very excited to go to Florida. It's his home state. Jacksonville is the designation. And
oh, of course she had to work that in there at random. There's always an attack. And it's her alma mater, which, frankly, that's an attack enough on Harvard as it is.
Designated place of the Republican National Convention.
Consider how to proceed forward. As schools are potentially considering perhaps a middle-of-the-road approach that, for example, New York is looking at, is that something that is acceptable to the president, this half half home, half in the building, as opposed to opening them up fully?
Yeah, I'll leave that to the president. I haven't spoken to him specifically about the middle of the road approach, but I will talk to him about that and get an answer for you. One thing I want to leave you with, and thank you all, these were very good and very thoughtful questions, so I appreciated them. This is a bit of a news item. The Kansas City mayor and the governor wrote to the governor, rather, a letter that said this: "We are at a crisis."
Before she gets into this, I just heard back from Asen on the video that he chopped. He didn't intentionally chop it in order to make it look like Trump was saying that Desert Storm was in a jungle. That wasn't. He was chopping it because of the swiffing part. I just heard back from him right now. Hold on, he's writing something else. So, and that's what Asen, his comment on it was oof, OOF, and when he says oof, it's because people have screwed up what they were talking about. And I don't see the tweet up there anymore because Twitter pulled it down, I think, because they labeled it manipulated media. I could find it if I want to, but you could look it up yourself. But Trump complained about it, and CNN and Snopes both fact-checked it. But Asen wasn't the one who put it out there saying, like, oh, he's an idiot. That, no, it would be gone because I retweeted it. I didn't capture the video of it. But anyway, we're not going to bother looking for it. He's writing something else, but I don't know what. Let's go back to Kaylee.
This is a bit of a news item. The Kansas City mayor and the governor wrote to the governor, rather, a letter that said this: "We are at a crisis point," he said, and additional help was needed to provide more tools for law enforcement and prosecutors to interrupt conspiracies to commit murder and the violent acts, particularly offenses committed by felons using deadly weapons in the streets of Kansas City. And as of yesterday, Kansas City had reached 100 homicides, a 40% increase from last year, according to the mayor's office. Absolutely tragic numbers.
That is, who's the president of Kansas City again?
And Attorney General Barr has announced that there will be a launch of what's going to be called Operation Legend. It's a new initiative designated to fight the surge of violent crime that we've seen in Kansas City, directly in response to those requests by the mayor and by the governor. And specifically, Operation Legend is going to focus on a federal effort to increase law enforcement presence in the city. Attorney General Barr has directed agents from the Department of Justice's law enforcement agencies, the FBI, U.S. Marshal, DEA, and ATF, to be on the ground in Kansas City within the next 10 days to help state and local officials fight the surge of violent crime. Operation Legend is named after 4-year-old Legend Taliaferro, who tragically died on June 29th as a result of being shot in the face while he slept in his home. Taliaferro survived a heart surgery as an infant, and he tragically lost his life. And we at the federal government want to make sure that that never happens and use our resources to the fullest extent of the law to ensure that individuals and young children like Legend are able to live their lives and live so peacefully. Thank you so much.
Daily, if it's safe to send people back to schools, it's safe to send Manafort back to prison.
If it's safe to send people back to school, is it safe to send Manafort back to prison? That's been floating around for a couple of weeks now. And sometimes the question is Cohen, but it's usually Manafort. Or, for example, is it safe to send Roger Stone to prison? Because he's had now his sentencing, his showing up for prison time pushed back until September. But that was a great question. Okay, would be so funny if she dropped her folder and all the PPP checks fell out. Yeah, this is the best part. Grover Norquist runs the Americans Against Taxes or whatever. This total anti-tax organization. American Freedom Tax Liberation. And he got PPP money. So, and our national debt, last time I looked, I think it was 26 trillion. I'm not even going to look right now. It's insane. We don't care anymore. I know he has to go up to the mic, pick it up, and drop it. With or without binder there. Who are the Powerpuff Girls? I only recognize Kaylee, but interesting, though. I'm not going to comment on that. Producer Joanna, you're welcome to comment on those ladies leaving with Kaylee.
Live their lives and live so peacefully. Thank you so much.
Nobody cares. There. If you want to comment on the Powerpuff Girls there, you're welcome to. Meh. Oh, dear. Yeah. Well, they're working for Trump. Hold on a second. Let me read what Asen right here. Gets fact check. No, because people just decide it was cut a certain way. They don't complain about the clip for it. And clip on this, or the other clip on this, it was an overreaction in the end. Yeah, so Asen saying it was just an overreaction to, that wasn't how he intended the clip to be viewed at all, but people took it the wrong way because, you know, people, they suck. Can I be a Powerpuff Girl? Sure, you can be Bubbles. I think, no, aren't I Bubbles? Hold on. Kevinly Daughter, which Powerpuff Girl am I? Which is a cool one?
You'd probably be Buttercup.
I'm Buttercup. My little Buttercup. Thank you. Who are you?
I'm Buttercup as well.
Oh, you're also Buttercup.
You could be Blossom.
I don't want to be Blossom. She's a whore. Buttercup.
You don't have to say that. Even if it's true.
You can be Bubbles. We're both Buttercup. So what are you going to do? All right, kids. It's too early for Billy Joel. We do have a vote up right now for Billy Joel, so go check it out. Hashtag Billy Joel Madness on Twitter and get your vote in there. They're all good now. They're all great votes. I don't remember what it was, but they're all good votes because now we're in the Sweet 16 round and next the Grade 8. So it's going to be fun. I don't know why I'm putting these back on. I don't need my headphones right now. Bubbles was the dumb one. That's exactly what Kevinly Daughter said right there. You somehow managed to completely escape Powerpuff. Powerpuff Girls it's a good show. It's actually really entertaining. It was like the Powerpuff Girls. My kids went from Powerpuff Girls to SpongeBob. Both great shows. You are Mojo Jojo, David. I was waiting for that. Yes, you can be Mojo Jojo. It's a great show. So it's highly entertaining. So if you do have kids or grandkids or great-grandkids and they do want to watch cartoons, check out Powerpuff Girls and or SpongeBob. Dexter's Lab is entertaining as well. What else? What were the good shows from your child? She's got a sore throat right now, and I don't want to make her talk. But we both tested negative for COVID, so we're good. Speaking of which, I should do some follow-up on her sore throat. Wow, we've been doing this for an hour and almost 2 hours, guys, so I'm going to let you go for the sake of my throat and say something nice to Asen and thank him for what he's doing. At random, never saw it either. Oh, sorry. Johnny Bravo, Ren and Stimpy, very funny. And Ren and Stimpy actually was not a kid's cartoon. That came out of MTV originally, and then made its way into cartoons. Kevinly Daughter wants to say something. Scooby-Doo.
Courage the Cowardly Dog. Scooby-Doo's like the best.
She loves Scooby-Doo. Yeah, but Scooby-Doo was not. It's not that funny for adults. Scooby-Doo is a great cartoon. Don't get me wrong, but it's not. It doesn't have the crossover effect like a SpongeBob. Adults will have SpongeBob parties and watch SpongeBob because SpongeBob is hilarious. But Scooby-Doo, not really that funny. Sorry, I had to say it. Just being honest. Okay. I don't know if you guys can hear. It's not supposed to be funny. It's a mystery, asshole. So that's what I put up with. Dexter's Lab is very funny. Bugs Bunny has always been funny. I'll still watch a Bugs Bunny. I did watch Bugs Bunny on ABC a few years ago and then cut out all the violent parts. So it was duck season, rabbit season, duck season, rabbit season, duck season, rabbit season, rabbit season, duck season, fire! Except they cut out the so it's just like, what just happened to Daffy? Why is his face all gray? It was stupid. I say sorry a lot, Danielle. Danielle, thank you very much for moderating today. Hopefully the chat went okay for you guys. Let me take a look at the stream on the YouTube. Wow, okay, it's going nuts on me now too. So hopefully the bigger window over there, I'm going to look at it on my phone. If I can see it, these glasses are not quite powerful enough because I'm almost 50. If I can see it, I think you guys can see it. I think everyone liked the font. The Roadrunner's great. Warner Brothers cartoons were the best, still hilarious. Yeah, the WB stuff is good. You know what else is Animaniacs is a funny cartoon with full of adult references. Like I think they just wrote it for themselves, and because it's a cartoon, kids watch it too. A lot of stuff on Adult Swim is good. Oh, what's the one? Teenage. Can't even think of it right now. I can picture it. I just don't know the name of it because it's just so off the wall. It's a William Street production. I just did a William Street production. I haven't watched it yet. If you do have Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, I was just on Three Busy Debras, episode 5, I think. So if you want to check me out on Three Busy Debras, you're welcome to. I haven't seen it yet. If anyone has seen it and wants to give feedback, too bad. I'm not interested. I'm sure I was terrible. And then if we get the audition where Kevin Lee Daughter carried the whole show that we auditioned for today, then we'll let you know. And in which case we'll be traveling down to LA next week. So, but not on a plane. We'll drive. Ghostbusters cartoon? There was a Ghostbusters cartoon. I don't know. It was good. Teen Titans was okay. It wasn't funny, though. So we just talk about cartoons for the next hour. Okay, guys, I'm going to let you go. Here come the closing credits. No, they're not updated, but I also haven't had any new patrons in the last couple of days. So get on there. If you're out there and you do want to contribute to this broadcast so that you can stay tuned up to the news and digest it with us, please go to kevinleefather.com. You can also PayPal me directly if you want to just make a one-time payment. PayPal.me/KevinLeeDad. And I would appreciate anything there. It all helps add up. And hopefully I'll get this commercial and then I'll never need any more money again. I will need money again, guys. Trust me. I can't tell you any more details than that. But I'm very hopeful on it, and I hope you guys all have something to look forward to right now. Tomorrow on the broadcast, we will talk about things that you have in your life to look forward to. I think that's about it today. Bev, thank you. Rich, good to see you. Jana, thanks for being around. Green Room, go to bed. It's got to be late there. Barb just went to bed. Yes, Dr. Howard did upgrade, and you will be sponsoring one of the... It just went away. You'll be sponsoring the crawl one of these times here. Dr. Howard upgraded in a very Jewish way. And that's not anti-Semitic at all. It's very positive. I'll explain that when we see her name coming in the chat. Dr. Howard, remind me to explain that, because she taught me something about the Jewish religion I did not know. So that was kind of cool. The SCOTUS stuff is coming out tomorrow, too. That's going to be big news in the morning, so pay attention to that in the morning. Kevin Lee Daughter wants to say something. Oh, she's waving. She's saying goodbye. She doesn't want to say anything because her throat really hurts. Joanna, Producer Joanna probably has some Jew in her. Yes, it was a multiple of 18, so that's a giveaway, but I'll talk about it tomorrow when we talk about it, and you'll see it in the new credits. So I do have to adjust the new credits for that. Speaking of credits, here it is. I'm going to stop talking. Leave me alone, guys. Have a great night.